There certainly are flashier defensemen available at the top of the 2024 NHL Draft than Sam Dickinson, but there might not be a more complete blue liner available than Dickinson. Dickinson was a stalwart on the back end for the OHL champion London Knights. He came into the season with a ton of hype behind him as a likely top 10 pick in the NHL Draft, and during the season, he did absolutely nothing to quiet all that hype. It's worth noting that the London Knights are truly one of the premier organizations in Canadian junior hockey. They came into the season with legitimate Memorial Cup hype. They were one of the favorites entering the year, and they're also just an organization that pumps out NHL talent. We're talking about guys like Matthew Tkachuk, Mitch Marner, Robert Thomas, and the guy that's probably most applicable to Sam Dickinson, Oilers star defenseman Evan Bouchard. So Dickinson had a lot to live up to coming into this year, and there was a lot of pressure on him and the rest of his team to perform. They lived up to it. Dickinson ended up racking up 70 points in 60 regular season games from the back end for the Knights, and just kept putting up those points into the playoffs as the Knights made their push towards the Memorial Cup. All that offensive production certainly speaks well for his ability to help his team score goals, and while I'm not a big plus-minus guy, when you're plus 56, the best mark on a great London Knights team, you're probably doing something right in terms of your two-way play. So what makes Sam Dickinson special? Well, first, there's his skating. He's just an all-around great skater with no real holes. Now, is he the fastest defenseman in the draft? No. Is he the quickest laterally? No. But he's good at every aspect of skating, and he does have the legitimate breakaway gear that a lot of other defensemen at the top of the draft don't quite have. Then there's the offensive game, which in a lot of ways is also a legitimate strength for Dickinson. Look, he's not going to be confused for Cale Makar in terms of dynamic highlight reel plays, but he does have a bomb of a slap shot that he finds ways to get through traffic, and he's an efficient passer, especially in terms of generating zone exits, which is probably the most important skill, passing skill at least, for an NHL defenseman to have, and he's especially good at it while under forechecking pressure. Again, something that is essential if your skills are going to translate to the NHL level as a defenseman. And as for, the whole defense part about being a defenseman, Dickens is about as sound as they come, especially given his age and especially given the fact that he's actually pretty young for his draft year. He uses that 6'3" frame of his well to win battles, to defend high danger areas, and he also sure seems like, in terms of my viewings of him, it seems like he has that necessary innate understanding of defensive zone responsibilities, of switches, of coverages that you need as a prospect if you're going to develop into a player who can be trusted in the biggest situations, in the toughest minutes, in the biggest games. And just as an added bonus, his coaches and everybody around him seems to rave about his work ethic, about his character, and if anything, that just a little bit cuts down on his bust potential. So does Dickinson have any weaknesses? Well, there aren't a lot, but there are some. There are reasons why you might not prefer Dickinson to some of the other top-tier defensemen in this draft. The big one is just that he's not the most dynamic defenseman. That's not to say he can't make plays. That's not to say he can't set up his teammates for goals or score goals. But he's not really the kind of highlight reel defenseman that some of the other top prospects in this draft are. If you're looking for a ton of playmaking creativity, if you're looking for dangles through traffic, plays that are going to end up on SportsCenter if they still show hockey plays, that's really not Dickinson's game, at least not yet. And his puck handling ability at times can be a little bit of a weakness. I've seen him have the puck be poke checked away from him a little bit too much for my liking, and it's something he's going to have to work on if he wants to hit his ceiling. Also, while Dickinson is big, he's got that ideal size for the position. He's not exactly nasty or mean or especially physical. He's functionally physical. He wins battles in the corners. He knows how to use leverage in the high danger areas, in the slot. He knows how to box out opposing forwards, but he's not necessarily going to throw that big bone-crushing hit or be that intimidating physical presence. That just doesn't come as naturally to him as it does to some of the other defensemen at the top of this draft. That said, for me, Sam Dickinson is the safest defenseman in the top tier of the 2024 NHL Draft. And I mean that in the best way possible. That's not an insult. To me, he plays a game that looks like it's going to transition seamlessly to the NHL in a way that a lot of the other defensemen, you kind of have to dream on what they might have to change in order to take full advantage of their skills. Dickinson is kind of a plug-and-play type of guy, at least in my eyes. It's not at all difficult for me to watch Sam Dickinson play and see him becoming a minutes-eating top-pair defenseman at the NHL level. And it's also hard for me to see him as being any worse than a decent second-pair defenseman. It's that combination of high floor and high ceiling that makes him a guy that I would feel comfortable taking as high as the top 5, but I certainly wouldn't ever let him leave the top 10.
We all silly like the mayor.